Hi, everybody. I am Kirsten Bush, the Business Development Lead here at Cause Inspired. And thank you all for joining us, as well as for being a part of the Cause Inspired family. We are honored to partner with so many incredible organizations that are working to make the world a better place. And this month, I'm excited to introduce you again to Morgan Berman. Morgan is the founder and board chair of MilkCrate, an app building service for nonprofits. And she's also the founder of Glitter, a subscription service that hires neighbors to clean communities. She has been recognized for her entrepreneurship by Forbes, the United Nations Foundation, the US Department of State, the United Way, and others. And she has long been an active community leader, which most recently includes becoming the executive director of Life Science Cares Philadelphia, which unites life science companies in the fight to end poverty. So today she's come to answer all the most common questions about apps for nonprofits. So thanks, Morgan.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to start sharing my screen so I can show you guys all the fun visuals. And the very first thing that I wanted to do is just give you guys a chance to introduce yourselves in the chat. I'd love to hear your name, your organization, your role, maybe where you're located. It's nice to kind of put a geographic map marker on these little squares that we're all sitting in. So feel free to introduce yourselves, and that way everyone can kind of get to know each other a little bit. And then when it's time for Q&A, we can kind of come off mute and talk a little bit, since it looks like it's not a huge group. So like I said, intros in the chat. And then if you think of a question while I'm talking about the presentation today, feel free to throw that in the chat, because then you won't forget your question, and then I won't have awkward cricket silence at the end when I say any questions. And like I said, we'll be doing Q&A at the end. So if you think of something later, we can talk about it then. And we are recording. So today I'm going to kind of introduce myself a little bit, talk about the problem that's really driven me to build the company that I built and continues to drive me in the work that I'm doing in my new role. Help you all think about your organization's audiences, tools, and metrics, and then understanding technology options and the demographics of usage to kind of help you start to get in the right frame of mind about how mobile apps for nonprofits work and how MilkCrate mobile apps work specifically. And then the kind of process of thinking through, when does it make sense for an organization to go down the path of developing an app, and how to do that in the fastest, most cost-effective and effective way possible. And then some case studies, and then we'll do a survey and Q&A. So as was said, I am both the board chair and founder of MilkCrate, a company that builds mobile apps for nonprofits to help them with engagement, communication, and progress tracking. I'm also the founder of Glitter. I put the website in there in case anyone's obsessed with getting rid of litter like I am and wants to check it out. And then I'm also the executive director of Life Science Cares, which is a funding entity in 4 cities across the country right now. I'm the ED for the Philadelphia chapter, and I partner with life science companies and 14 different nonprofits tackling poverty here in Philadelphia. I'm on a couple of boards, and I've worked both as a case manager and marketing and development person at nonprofits, mostly in the Philadelphia area. And my email is plastered on pretty much every slide. So if you ever have a question or want to get in touch, feel free to reach out. So I said there's a problem that's been kind of driving my work for a long time, and it's that only about 16% of funders and foundations specifically are helping their grantees track program funding outcomes. Now, it might sound a little like kind of jargony or niche, but if you think about it, the billions and billions of dollars that are getting poured into the millions of nonprofits that are out there, very few of those dollars are designed to actually measure, is it working? Are we actually achieving the goal of whatever this nonprofit investment or donation is supposed to achieve? And if you were to think about that like an entrepreneur or an investor, that sounds kind of crazy. Like, you don't pour money into something without asking the question, is it working after a little while? And so at MilkCrate, our job is to make it easier for nonprofits to answer that question, while also making it easier for the nonprofits to run better programs using mobile apps that engage the people they're serving, and then create the data around how well are they engaging those people? How are those people doing? How are they progressing? So that funders will kind of wake up to this problem and start supporting it more. So we'll get to that a little bit more, but first I want you to just kind of think about, there's everybody in your CRM, whether you're using Salesforce or Razor's Edge or Salsa Labs or any of the other things out there. If you're using some sort of tool to communicate and engage with donors, volunteers, participants, members, that's kind of your audience, right? But typically, when it comes to that communication, it's very one directional, where you're sending something out and hoping you get maybe some money back or some volunteer hours back. It's not the most dynamic or real-time kind of engagement. And so if you kind of think about the different tools that you might be using, you've got your marketing tools, your fundraising tools, and then you've got program delivery. And that's really the area where apps fit, and MilkCrate in particular. And there's not too much going on there other than maybe some efforts to outcomes apricot type thing where it's a case management tool, right? That tool doesn't usually go into the hands of the program participants. Whereas all of these other tools for marketing and fundraising, that's kind of there's some sort of interface designed for the end audience member, the donor, the member, the volunteer. And we'll make these slides available, and there's a blog post that talks a lot more about this if you wanted to read up more about like these different types of tools for these different types of use cases, just to kind of understand where apps fit in this kind of marketplace of technology. Now, questions to ponder to get you thinking about how might an app fit or not fit in your organization. So what is the goal of your organization? Are you achieving it? And how will you know if you're achieving it? How do you know that what you're reporting is what your funders want to see? Is engagement and content sharing getting in the way? What about tracking participation? How are your current tools serving you? And is their performance ideal? What gaps do you have? So hopefully some of these questions will start to make sense as we go through some of the content, and you'll start to have a sense of where you fit in all of this. Now, thinking about the destination versus the mode of transportation. You know, an app isn't the destination. An app or a website or a social media account is how you maybe get to your goal. So a goal would be engaging 100% of our program participants through push or through regular communication that we send and that they send back that we can track on a weekly basis, right? That's like a very specific kind of SMART goal. And the way you could get there is through a range of medium. Now, getting into what those tools could look like, I want to first make sure everyone understands websites, because they're one of the most common ways that nonprofits are communicating with people. And there's this concept of a responsive versus a non-responsive website that I want to get cleared up in case anyone doesn't already understand this. So a responsive website is one where when you open it up on your computer, it looks like a normal website. And then when you open it up on your smartphone, you can still see everything and everything makes sense and looks good. A non-responsive website is one that was designed in a kind of old school way where when you shrink it down or open it up on your phone, suddenly everything gets very small and cluttered and it's hard to read. Basically, good web design is always responsive, meaning it will respond to the parameters of the device that you're using. So I want to get that clear because when we talk about mobile applications versus mobile websites, a mobile website is really a responsive website, a website that you can open on your mobile device and have it work well and be easy to use. So some of the differences between a mobile app and a website are that with a mobile application, you can send push notifications. You can also access features and add content and interact with it, even if you're not connected to the internet in certain ways. An app experience also allows you to create a profile and to be segmented and have groups and have users be treated differently based on their profile information, their demographics, whatever kind of way you might want to segment your users. They can have a personalized experience in the app that can make it more engaging, more effective, and give you richer data. Now, the pros of a mobile website are you don't have to tailor to any particular device. You can reach more people because of that. It's instantly updated without having to go through the app stores, and you can quickly access it without having to download it and create an account. Now, sometimes if you have a website that you have to log into, then that access benefit goes away. But those are just some of the things to be thinking about. Now, when it comes to smartphones, which is the device that an app or a mobilely responsive website can live on, sometimes I'll hear from nonprofit people saying like, well, you know, the people we serve are really low income, so I don't think they have smartphones, or we serve, you know, this age group, and so this isn't going to work for them. And we need to keep doing paper flyers and sign-in sheets and snail mail and whatever. And what I say to them is that's not what the data says. The Pew Research Center has done this study year after year. This is 2019 data, but I think they probably, there might even be more recent data than this, but Americans of all ages, as you can see, are increasingly more likely to go online using their smartphone. And across all demographics, the vast majority of people have a smartphone. Even for 65 and older, it's 53% of the population. And as you can see, income does not have a huge impact on this. And the more likely, or if someone is low income, they're much more likely to have a smartphone than a computer. So hopefully, for those of you who didn't know this, I hope this helps kind of shift your perception of like who has a smartphone and how important a mobile first approach is for your organization, regardless of whether you wind up going with the app approach or the mobile website approach, or social media apps or whatever. Now, what is MilkCrate? What is a MilkCrate mobile app? How does this all work? So basically what we do is we help nonprofits to boost engagement and track program impact by helping them have their own branded mobile app for their program that their program participants use. And the way that we're able to do this affordably and effectively is by not building it from scratch, but instead using templates. So if you think of website tools like Squarespace or Wix or WordPress, those are all templated systems that allow you as a non-developer to launch something that looks like a professional website. And that's kind of how MilkCrate works, but with mobile apps. And we do this because back in the day, nonprofits would start getting grants of hundreds of thousands of dollars and entering into these very long, drawn out app development engagements that would lead to most likely disaster and a lot of wasted money and time. And so we took it upon ourselves to help nonprofits stop doing that and instead launch affordable, effective apps quickly using time-tested templates, which that's a fun alliteration I hadn't noticed before, using our system. So a couple of the nonprofits that we work with, we have many more than this, but from Alaska to Atlanta, there are nonprofits running their programs on MilkCrate apps, which is really cool to see this, keep growing. Some of the features are on this slide. There are a ton more on our website. If this ever sounds like something that might make sense for your organization or you're not sure, we can set you up with a MilkCrate team member to have a, totally free and kind of relaxed conversation about this. And they can also show you some of the other features and answer questions about, well, can it do this? And can it do that? And what about this? We have all of that on our website. So, but just to kind of give you a taste, having an events calendar and also a place where you can log volunteer shifts, being able to send push notifications, a directory where people can check in at locations or get a survey asking them about their experience once they check in somewhere, polls and surveys where they can be asked their opinion or how they're doing on a timed basis or based on some activity completed in the app. Being able to segment your users. I mentioned this earlier. One of the main benefits of a mobile app is that you can kind of create a tailored experience. So like the 10th graders have a different experience than the seniors, or the people living in this town see content different than the people living in this town. And And that kind of ties in with the idea of being able to share content and track participation, seeing who's, reading what article or logging which activities, that sort of thing. And this applies for a whole host of different types of nonprofit programs. I mentioned volunteering. About half of our clients are using a MilkCrate app for a volunteer user base, and the other half of our clients are using it for all these other things. Membership or members, kids in a youth group, social service clients, adult learners in some sort of workforce development program, all kinds of different things. Now, I talked a little bit about the problem that drives me, and this is how we kind of envision the solution, that funders give money to a nonprofit to help them achieve some sort of impact in the world. We can be a tool that they use to help engage the audience that they're trying to either impact and improve in terms of their life outcomes, or the volunteers that are helping get that work done. And that app generates data that shows to the funder, you made a good investment, keep investing in this organization. And obviously also helping the organization save time and money, which I'll get to in one of our examples, that our apps can actually help organizations be even more efficient with the capital that they receive, helping staff save time and resources. So where are we all in this process? These are some kind of additional questions to think about for the next half of the presentation. So what is impact for your organization? How, if at all, do you track it? What do you wish was possible? And how would this help your work? This is the most effective way I've come up with, and I'll give a moment so I can drink some water and you can kind of read this to kind of represent when an app makes sense for an organization. Basically, if you need consistent engagement from the people you're serving, like you need them to fill out a survey every Tuesday and Thursday, or you want them to be able to sign up for something on any given moment, or you want them to be able to check in once every other Tuesday and, whatever at a location, and then fill out some information about their experience, that's when it makes sense. If this is a weekend experience that people participate in once in their lives, or, a 2-week program or something, it's not usually necessary. You're usually able to get things done more efficiently without this kind of technology investment. But when it becomes a longer term thing with a regular need for engagement, that's when there can be like a real payoff, and like efficiency of scale there can make it make sense. The second piece is, do you need that behavior data? Do you need to be able to see who's doing what when? Will it help you run a better program? Will it help you fundraise better to be able to tell that story in a data-driven way? If you're answering yes to some of those questions, then that's when this can start to really make sense for an organization. I have another blog post here that goes through these questions and a few more questions in more detail. But again, I think the most effective and efficient way to kind of answer these questions is to just get on a call with someone from MilkCrate, because you can come up with all your what ifs during that call and kind of figure out if this makes sense. Our job, frankly, is to get to, sorry, this isn't a good fit as quickly as possible, because we don't want to waste your time and we don't want to build apps that won't work for the organization. Our job is to have only like case study ready clients. So yeah, take us up on that. All right, so I'm going to go over a couple of case studies. Smith Memorial Playground actually launched an app during the pandemic because programming had been derailed at their outdoor play facility as well as their indoor play facility. And so they wanted to make it easier for parents to kind of keep engaged with their facilities while being at a distance. And this was actually made possible through a restricted grant with one of our foundation partners, the Pincus Family Foundation. And we've worked with several foundations on this sort of thing. So if anyone's ever like, oh, well, maybe I need to get a grant for this. Oh, maybe I need to go talk to a foundation. Oh, I could go to one of my existing funders. We'd happily help you with that and have done that several times. This is another actually COVID case study. This is the Jersey Cares app that we launched in 3 weeks. And according to the client, we are saving them $40,000 a year in staff time because now they don't have to manually distribute and track all of the volunteer work that they used to have to do manually. Now the volunteers can sign up in their app, see who needs food delivered, track that they've delivered the food, and it makes it really easy for them. So that was a great one. Very proud of that. Here's another one. This is another volunteer one. This is the volunteers for this program used to carry around like a 4-inch binder of resources they needed to reference when they were talking with different people about different age groups of children. And now they have all the resources and reference materials in the palm of their hand, and it logs when they're sharing that information and with whom, and helps provide a kind of community collaborative digital space for the volunteers to share what's going well and upload photos and things like that of their experiences. Inner City Capital Connections is an entrepreneurial, or they're a training program for business owners in inner cities to help them grow their businesses. So kind of like a workforce development program, but not quite. And the app is the tool that they use for kind of that training experience, where they're able to communicate with the students and kind of support them in their journey through the program over the course of, I believe, 6 months. We Vote is another example of a very successful app where when they launched the app, they were able to get some really great data, both outputs and outcomes. This app provides civic engagement information and opportunities. And when they launched it, they got 450 instances of voters viewing the voter guide in an election cycle, which was amazing because they used to try and get that information out through Facebook, and Facebook, because they weren't buying ads to advertise this content to their existing audience. So their audience never saw it. I think it was like 0.3% of their audience on Facebook ever saw the voter guide because of Facebook's kind of pay to play model. But when you have your own app, you don't have to buy ads to send content to people. It's your app. You own it. You control it. Whatever you want people to see, they'll see. And then you're able to measure it, which was amazing. They're also able to measure an outcome that app users were 50% more likely to vote after downloading the app at least a week before the election. So very cool case study there. So now that you've seen some examples, learned a bit more about how this mobile technology works and what does and doesn't work, and thought a bit about how this might play out in your organization, I'm curious if anyone has thoughts about what you might be able to change in your organization. And we can kind of get back to this a little bit during Q&A. But I just want to I like recording some ideas there. I'm also going to share, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute. I'm going to give you all a link. Beep. I have a survey I would love for you all to complete. It's also like a feedback form to let us know what you got out of this, because we're always trying to understand what people found useful and what wasn't useful. So feel free to fill that out. It'll also be a kind of alert for us to know to reach out based on your answers to some of the questions if you want to have a follow-up conversation with someone at MilkCrate. So that's the end of my formal presentation, and I would now love to take a look at the chat, and I see there are no questions waiting for me, which is not great, but hopefully people are just dying to come off mute and ask live.
I do have a few questions. So one, my first question is, are there companies besides MilkCrate that do this?
That's a great question. The answer is not really. Yes and no. There are companies that have built templated app systems that are really tailored to different markets. So like there are app systems out there for like mobilizing your sales for your salespeople or your customers. A lot of tools like that out there for like more business oriented things. There's a couple that I've seen that are more for like a church. But like we are the most kind of adaptable yet tailored to nonprofit use cases that I've ever seen. And someone asked, can this integrate with Salesforce? Yes, it can. Good question. Yeah, that's a big one.
And everyone, feel free to pop questions in the chat, or if you're feeling bold, unmute yourself. That's also allowed. But I do have a couple other questions, so I'll go until someone else pipes in. My next question is, if someone wants to get an app for their nonprofit, what can they expect from the process? Like, what would your company need from them, and what would be the timeline?
I love that question. We actually have a page on our website that I'm going to pop in the chat. I was going to share my screen, but I need to try and get people to go to the website, right? So this way you'll have a tab open, you'll come back to it after the webinar, and then you'll be like, I really should talk to them. So I'm going to put the URL here in the chat. And basically on this page at the top, it talks about the difference between templated and custom apps, which I didn't really get into. So maybe I should talk about that a little bit. It talks about our pricing and then the kind of timeline and how we work with our clients and what's included. So that's all self-explanatory, but the part at the top that I should probably touch on, that difference between custom and templated. A custom app, like if you were to, all those case studies I showed you, if a client had come to a custom development, company and said, build me this from scratch, excuse me, that would have cost like at least $100,000, probably more like $200,000, if not more, to like get all of those features and that experience from like the first line of code. And that is what nonprofits used to do, except they didn't know where they wanted to end up because they'd never done it before. And so they would make all these mistakes along the way, and they'd wind up with like this Frankenstein of a tool that didn't actually get anything done. So that's where we come in, with having done this dozens and dozens and dozens of times for all of these different organizations. We know what features work. We know what kind of, user experience works. We know what doesn't. We've thought of the things like making it integrate with Salesforce, making it so you've got this thing. And that's why templates can be so powerful, but they have to be the right templates. And that's why, building a Google, like even Google, you can build like a kind of mobile web app thing, but it's not going to be like the tried and true way of getting it done for a nonprofit program.
Mm. Thanks. And your website answers my next question that I had, which is how to start to budget. I know we're at the kind of end of year time for a lot of nonprofits where they're thinking about their budget for the next year. So I do see this handy chart there on the website that can be a helpful tool for any nonprofits that fall into that category.
Yeah, absolutely. Our pricing tiers, like I said, instead of spending $100,000 or $200,000 building something from scratch, a few $1,000s, and we can launch it a few $100 a month. We will support it, maintain it, provide all the, real live, human to human support you need, as well as all the documentation and the back end, like technical support, so that you guys don't have to, we don't expect any nonprofit client to become tech savvy by working with us. It's our job to do the complicated stuff that's not in your wheelhouse. And yeah, that's how we work from a kind of business model perspective.
Well, that's all the questions that I had.
Well, they were good questions.
Any other questions from our audience members? Well, if not, then you know where to find Morgan's email. Yeah. All right. So Morgan, thank you so much again for your time, and everybody have an awesome Wednesday afternoon.
Thanks.